Imagine losing everything you love most in the world because of a single wrong decision that repeated itself 1,000 times. Imagine waking up one day to discover that your own children have been taken away because you've become a danger to them. This is the brutal reality that millions of parents face when addiction takes over their lives, destroying not just their bodies and minds, but also the most sacred bonds that exist, family ties. The story you're about to hear isn't just about drugs or recovery. It's about a mother who discovered that love for her children can be more powerful than any chemical substance, stronger than any social prejudice, more transformative than any rehabilitation program. Amanda Rodriguez was an ordinary woman with ordinary dreams, until life pushed her into an abyss that seemed bottomless. Methamphetamine addiction didn't arrive overnight. It was a slow and devastating process that corroded every aspect of her existence until only an empty shell remained of what she once was. When social services knocked on her door and took Grace, Noah, and Lily away, Amanda thought her story had come to an end. But sometimes when you're at rock bottom, the only possible direction is up. What she didn't imagine was that her journey back to the surface wouldn't just be about regaining sobriety. It would be about building a business empire that would prove to the entire world that real transformation is possible. This isn't a story of easy, happy endings or instant miracles. It's the raw and honest narrative of a woman who faced the judicial system, social prejudice, her own family, and even the children she loved so much in an epic battle for redemption. Amanda discovered that it wasn't enough to just stop using drugs. She needed to prove she was worthy of being a mother again, that she could be a responsible provider, that her presence in the children's lives would be a blessing and not a curse. And to do that, she made a decision that would change not just her life, but the lives of dozens of other families. She would build a business from scratch, without money, without experience, without support, using only her determination and unconditional love for her children. Prepare yourself for an emotional journey that will make you question everything you think you know about addiction, family, justice, and second chances. This is the story of how a desperate mother transformed into a successful entrepreneur, not out of ambition or greed, but for something much more powerful, the need to prove she deserved to have her children back. You'll discover how Amanda faced cruel rejections, devastating legal battles, and even a lawsuit filed by her own daughter, all while building a business empire that would become a symbol of hope for hundreds of people. But be warned, this story will stir your emotions in ways you don't expect, because in the end we're all just human beings fighting to be worthy of the love of those who matter most in our lives. You know those moments in life when you look in the mirror and don't recognize who's staring back? That's exactly what happened to Amanda Rodriguez on a cold January morning in Phoenix. The house where she woke up wasn't even hers. It belonged to an acquaintance who took pity and let her sleep on the couch for a few nights. The peeling walls and the smell of mold mixed with despair told a story she knew all too well. Methamphetamine addiction had become her most faithful companion over the past 5 years, and like any toxic relationship, it had taken away everything she loved most. Amanda wasn't a bad person. She was just a woman who had lost control of her own life, and now she was paying the highest price anyone can pay. Her 3 children, Grace age 14, Noah age 12, and little Lily just 8, had been torn from her arms by social services after she nearly died of an overdose in front of them. The injustice of the situation weighed on her chest like a giant stone. Not that she didn't understand, of course she understood. An addicted mother can't take care of children. Everyone knows that. But what really hurt was knowing that deep down, she was still the same Amanda who sang lullabies, made pancakes on Sundays, and cried along when they got hurt. The problem was that this Amanda had gotten lost along the way, swallowed by a substance that promised to take away the pain, but only brought more suffering. Now she lived a ghost's life, wandering between shelters and acquaintances' houses, always with that feeling that she was bothering people, that she was a burden. The family she loved so much was far away, protected from herself, and that was simultaneously the most right and most wrong thing in the world. The days dragged on as if they were entire weeks. Amanda would wake up without purpose, walk the streets of Phoenix trying to find some meaning, some reason to keep breathing. People on the street would look away when they saw her, not out of malice, but because nobody likes to face their own fears head on. She represented everything they were terrified of becoming, someone who had lost everything because of wrong choices. And you know what's worse? Amanda knew this. She saw in people's eyes the judgment, the pity, the discomfort. It was as if she carried an invisible sign that read, "Warning, destroyed life." But deep down, very deep down, there was still a spark of hope that refused to be completely extinguished. A little voice that whispered that maybe, just maybe, there was still time to fix things. It was on one of those aimless walks that she found a crumpled letter at the bottom of the worn bag she carried. The letter had arrived a few days ago, but she hadn't had the courage to open it. She knew it was from social services, and those letters never brought good news. When she finally tore open the envelope with trembling hands, the words seemed to dance on the page. But one sentence stood out like a ray of sunshine in the middle of the storm. Last opportunity to regain custody of the children. Amanda read and reread those words until she memorized every comma, every period. 18 months. She had 18 months to prove she had changed, that she was worthy of being a mother again. 18 months to show that recovery was possible, that she could be stronger than the addiction that had dominated her life. For the first time in years, Amanda felt something different running through her veins. It wasn't the chemical substance she knew so well, but something much more powerful. Hope. Of course, the task seemed impossible. How was someone who didn't even have a place to live going to prove she could care for 3 children? How was a person who could barely take care of herself going to convince a judge she deserved a second chance? But you know how it is. Sometimes you need to be at rock bottom to find the strength to start climbing. And Amanda, even shattered, even lost, still had one thing that nobody could take from her: love for her children. This love had been muffled by addiction, had been buried under layers of shame and despair, but it was still there, pulsing like a wounded but living heart. Reality, however, was cruel as always. Amanda had no money, no house, no job, nothing but an official letter and a promise she made to herself in that moment. She looked up at the Phoenix sky with that scorching sun that seemed to judge everyone and made a silent oath. No matter what it took, no matter how many doors slammed in her face, no matter how many times she fell, she would get up. Because for the first time in a long time, she had a real reason to fight. It wasn't just about her, it was about Grace, Noah, and Lily. It was about the family she had lost and now had a microscopic chance to win back. Addiction had taken everything from her, but it wouldn't take this opportunity. The rehabilitation clinic wasn't exactly what you'd call a welcoming place. The white walls seemed to scream, "You failed at life," and the smell of disinfectant mixed with despair made anyone want to run away. But Amanda had no choice. It was a mandatory part of the process if she wanted any chance of getting her children back. She dragged herself to the sessions like someone going to their own funeral, always sitting in the back of the room, trying to become invisible. The other people there seemed to be at different stages of recovery, some full of hope, others clearly there just to check the box. Amanda fit into the second group, at least in the beginning. She listened to the stories, the testimonies, the elaborate plans for starting over, but everything sounded like empty talk. How was someone who had lost everything because of addiction simply going to rise again? It sounded like American movie talk, the kind everyone knows is fake. But life has those moments. Sometimes change arrives disguised as hallway conversation on any given Thursday when you least expect it. It was in one of those boring sessions that Amanda met Carlos Martinez, a man in his early 40s who had a different energy from the others. He didn't speak with that self-help tone that irritated everyone, nor did he seem to be there to impress anyone. Carlos told his story like someone talking about the weather, natural, without drama, but with a sincerity that cut through the room's air like a sharp blade. He had been addicted to heroin for almost a decade, had lost his family, his house, his dignity, everything a man can lose. But the part that caught Amanda's attention wasn't the suffering. Everyone there had plenty of suffering. What made her lift her head and really listen was when he talked about how he had regained his family's trust through honest work. It wasn't empty talk, it wasn't hollow promises, it was a flesh and blood man telling how he had climbed out of the hole by digging with his own hands, one shovelful at a time. Carlos had started with a small catering company, making sandwiches for small events, birthday parties, office meetings. Simple stuff, nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and, more importantly, showed everyone that he had truly changed. "You know what the secret was," he said, looking directly into Amanda's eyes as if he were speaking only to her. "It wasn't just stopping using. It was proving that I could be useful, that I could contribute, that I wasn't just an ex-addict asking for a chance. I was a hard-working man who happened to have a complicated past." Those words echoed in Amanda's head for days. She had never thought about it that way. She always saw herself as someone asking for forgiveness, asking for an opportunity, asking to be accepted back. But Carlos was talking about something different, becoming someone who deserved respect, not out of pity but on merit. The injustice of her situation addiction still hurt, but now she was beginning to see that maybe she could do something about it. After that session, Amanda couldn't get Carlos's words out of her head. She kept thinking, what if she didn't just wait for someone to give her a chance? What if she created her own opportunities? The idea seemed crazy. A woman without money, without experience, without anything, wanting to start a business. But the more she thought about it, the more the idea made sense. She needed to prove to the judge, to social workers, to her own children that she had changed. And it wasn't enough to just be clean. Anyone can stay clean for a few months when they're being watched. She needed to show that she could be a responsible provider, a mother her children could be proud of. Addiction had stolen her dignity, her self-esteem, her ability to dream. But maybe it was time to steal all that back. Carlos had succeeded, and he wasn't better than her. He was just someone who had decided to fight in a different way. If he could climb out of the hole by building something with his own hands, why couldn't she? The conversation that changed everything happened on a Tuesday afternoon when Amanda finally gathered the courage to approach Carlos after a session. She was nervous, stuttering, feeling small, but he listened to her with a patience she wasn't used to receiving. When she told him about the children, about the letter from social services, about the 18 months she had to prove she deserved a second chance, his eyes lit up in a way she didn't expect. "You have something I didn't have when I started," he said. "You have a much stronger reason than mine not to give up. I wanted to win back my family, but you want to win back your children. That's enough fuel to move mountains." He wasn't being condescending or making empty promises. He was being real, honest, direct. And for the first time in years, Amanda felt seen as a capable person, not as a victim worthy of pity. Carlos explained that the secret wasn't in having money or experience. It was in having determination and being willing to start small, very small. "Look," Carlos continued, "I'm not going to lie to you saying it's going to be easy. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. You're going to hear no more times than you can count. People are going to judge you, doubt you, treat you like you're a time bomb about to explode. But you know what I learned? Every no is just a person who hasn't understood yet the value you have to offer. And when you find the right people, when you prove you've changed through your actions, not your words, that's when things start to change." Amanda felt like she was hearing a battle plan, a real strategy to get out of the impossible situation she found herself in. It wasn't motivational coach talk or get-rich-quick promises. It was the testimony of someone who had walked through the same dark valley and found a way out. Recovery wasn't just about stopping drug use. It was about rebuilding an entire life from scratch, brick by brick, day after day. When Amanda left the clinic that afternoon, she was no longer the same person who had entered. Not that she had become a successful entrepreneur overnight. That would be ridiculous. But something fundamental had changed inside her. For the first time since losing her children, she had a plan that went beyond simply staying clean and hoping for the best. She had a vision, even if still hazy, of how she could prove she deserved to have her family back. Not through pleas or empty promises, but through concrete actions, tangible results, a transformation so real that no one could question it. Addiction had been her master for 5 long years, dictating every decision, destroying every dream. But now she had found something stronger than any chemical substance, a clear purpose and a path to reach it. Of course, she still didn't know exactly how she was going to do it or where to start, but for the first time in a long time, these questions didn't scare her. They motivated her. That night, Amanda slept differently. It wasn't peaceful sleep. She was still far from that, but it was the sleep of someone who had found a purpose, even if that purpose seemed impossible to achieve. She knew the road would be long, full of obstacles and temptations. She knew many people would doubt her, that many doors would slam in her face, but she also knew she had something she hadn't had for a long time, a reason to wake up the next day. And sometimes, when life knocks you down in every possible way, a simple reason to wake up is enough to start a revolution. What Amanda didn't imagine was that this revolution would begin in a place she never expected, with a person who would completely change how she saw her own possibilities. Having a plan is one thing. Putting that plan into practice is something completely different. Amanda discovered this the hard way when she started going door to door offering personal organizing services through the middle-class neighborhoods of Phoenix. The idea seemed good on paper. Everyone needs help organizing their home, and she had always been good at that when she had a normal life. But reality was much crueler than she imagined. People would open the door, look her up and down, worn clothes, tired appearance, that somewhat lost look of someone still getting used to being sober, and already knew what type of person she was. They didn't even need to hear the complete proposal. The no thank you came with a forced smile and a quickly closed door, as if she were contagious. Each rejection was like a punch to the stomach, a painful reminder of how addiction had destroyed not just her life, but also her credibility. Amanda knew people were right to be suspicious. Who would let an ex-addict into their home to handle their belongings? But knowing it was understandable didn't make the pain any less. The first weeks were a true test of emotional endurance. Amanda woke up every day with renewed exuded determination, dressed as best she could with the few clothes she had, mentally prepared her presentation, and hit the streets. But with each no she received, a little piece of the hope Carlos had planted in her died. It wasn't just the rejection of the service, it was the way people looked at her, as if she were a danger, a threat, someone who didn't deserve even 5 minutes of consideration. One lady actually closed the door in her face in the middle of her presentation, without even letting her finish speaking. Another said she didn't hire that type of people, and even threatened to call security if she didn't leave the property immediately. The injustice of the situation burned in Amanda's chest like acid. She was trying to do the right thing, fighting to rebuild her life, but it seemed like the whole world had decided she didn't deserve a second chance. It was as if she carried an invisible mark on her forehead: ex-addict, don't trust. And the worst part was that deep down she kind of agreed with them. But what really shook Amanda was discovering, through a call from the social worker, that her children were being prepared for permanent adoption. The news came on a particularly difficult afternoon. After a whole day of rejections, Amanda was sitting on a park bench, counting the few coins she had in her pocket and wondering if she wasn't being foolish to believe she could change her situation, when the phone rang. The cold, professional voice of the social worker explained that, given Amanda's history and lack of significant progress, the permanent adoption process would be accelerated. "It's best for the children," she said, as if talking about the weather. "They need stability, a family that can offer security." Each word was a stab to Amanda's heart. She wanted to scream that she was trying, that she was fighting, that she had a plan. But how could she explain that her plan consisted of being rejected by dozens of people every day? How could she convince someone she was on the right track when she wasn't even sure of it herself? The hardest blow came when Amanda learned that Grace, her oldest daughter, had told social workers she no longer wanted to see her mother. The 14-year-old girl, who used to be glued to her like gum, now completely rejected her. Amanda understood it was Grace's way of protecting herself. The girl had suffered too much watching her mother destroy herself, had gone through traumas no child should experience, but understanding didn't make the pain any less. Grace was building a new life, adapting to the temporary foster family, trying to forget the years of chaos and suffering. And Amanda, as much as it hurt to admit, was a living reminder of everything Grace wanted to forget. Grace was smart, mature beyond her years. She knew her mother had chosen drugs over them, and now she was protecting her own heart the only way she knew how, by cutting all ties. Addiction hadn't just destroyed Amanda's life, it had destroyed her own children's trust in her. Time was passing too quickly, and Amanda felt like she was running on a treadmill that only accelerated. 2 months had already passed since she started trying to build her business, and the result was practically zero. She had managed only 3 small jobs, organizing a closet here, cleaning out a garage there, that barely paid for her to eat. How was she going to prove to the court that she was a capable provider if she could barely support herself? How was she going to show she could care for 3 children if she couldn't even convince people to give her a chance? Recovery was being much harder than she had imagined. It wasn't just about stopping drug use. She had already accomplished that. It was about rebuilding a reputation, regaining people's trust, proving she was worthy of respect. And all this while the clock ticked against her, while her children moved further away, while the system prepared to remove any possibility of them returning to her. The nights were the worst. Amanda would lie on the borrowed couch, staring at the ceiling, doing math that never added up. 16 months left, almost no money, zero credibility, children who didn't want to see her. How the hell was she going to get out of this? Sometimes the temptation to give up was almost irresistible. It would be easier to accept that she had lost, that addiction had won, that her children would be better off without her anyway. At least then she would stop suffering, stop being rejected every day, stop carrying the weight of hope that seemed increasingly impossible to achieve. But whenever these thoughts came, she remembered her children's faces, Lily's laughter, Noah's hugs, the way Grace used to braid her hair when she was little. They deserved a mother who would fight for them, even if that fight seemed lost from the beginning. The family she had lost was worth any humiliation, any rejection, any pain. She just needed to find a way to prove that to the world. It was on one of those sleepless nights of despair that Amanda realized she was approaching the problem the wrong way. She was trying to convince people who didn't know her to trust her, based only on words. But words were cheap. She herself had made thousands of empty promises during the years of addiction. What she needed were results, concrete proof, something that spoke louder than her past. It was no use knocking on random doors hoping someone would take pity on her. She needed a different strategy, an approach that showed her value before even revealing her story. The problem was, she had no idea how to do that. All she knew was that she couldn't give up, couldn't accept that her children would grow up thinking their mother hadn't fought for them. Even if the chances were minimal, even if everyone said it was impossible, she had to keep trying. Because sometimes when you're at rock bottom, the only possible direction is up, even if the climb seems impossible to make alone. After months of hard struggle, Amanda had finally achieved something that seemed impossible: regular clients. There weren't many, just 5 families who had given her a chance after much insistence and proving her worth through free work. She organized closets, cleaned garages, created organization systems that actually worked. The money was little, but it was honest, and for the first time in years, Amanda felt she was building something solid. Every cent she earned was religiously saved in an old tin can she hid under the mattress. It wasn't much, maybe $300 after 3 months of hard work, but it represented much more than money. It represented dignity. It represented proof that she could be useful, that recovery was real. Amanda had even managed to rent a tiny room. Nothing luxurious, but it was hers. For the first time since losing her children, she had a fixed address, a routine, a life that seemed to be heading in the right direction. Addiction was getting more and more distant in the rearview mirror, replaced by something much more powerful: purpose. But life has a cruel way of reminding you that you're never safe, that a single phone call can destroy everything you've built with so much effort. It was a Tuesday night when the phone rang. Amanda was organizing her few belongings, planning how she would use the money she had saved to buy better clothes for the next meeting with social workers. She was even smiling, a rare thing in recent years, when she answered the phone. On the other side of the line, a voice she didn't immediately recognize said, "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is the Phoenix Police Department. Your son Noah was found." The world stopped. Amanda felt as if someone had pulled the ground out from under her feet. Noah? Her 12-year-old Noah? What was he doing on the street? Why were the police calling her? Questions stumbled over each other in her head while the voice continued explaining that the boy had run away from his temporary foster family's house and had been found wandering the streets trying to reach her. He was physically fine but emotionally shaken and had told the officers he just wanted to see his mother. The rush to the police station was a blur of panic and despair. Amanda caught the first bus she found, without even thinking about the fare money she was taking from her so carefully guarded savings. During the entire trip, she couldn't stop thinking, how had Noah discovered where she lived? How had he left home without anyone noticing? And more importantly, what did this mean for the custody recovery process? When she finally arrived at the station, she saw Noah sitting in a chair too big for him, with red eyes from crying so much. Amanda's heart broke into 1,000 pieces. He looked so small, so lost, so different from the happy boy she remembered. When Noah saw her, he ran into her arms as if she were the only solid thing in a world that was falling apart. "I just wanted to see you, Mom," he whispered in her ear, and Amanda felt as if the entire world was conspiring against her. Addiction had stolen so much precious time with her children, and now that she was trying to fix things, their very love for her was being used against her. What happened in the following hours was a bureaucratic nightmare Amanda would never forget. Social workers arrived looking like they already knew this was going to happen, as if they were just waiting for Amanda to make a false step. The woman who coordinated the case, a lady in her 50s with thick glasses and a permanently disapproving expression, looked at Amanda as if she were personally responsible for all the world's problems. "This is exactly the type of situation we feared," she said, leafing through papers in a folder that seemed to contain Amanda's entire life summarized in cold, impersonal reports. "The child is clearly confused about what's best for him. Your presence in his life is causing more harm than good." Each word was like a slap in the face. Amanda wanted to scream that Noah had run away because he missed her, because the love between mother and child doesn't disappear just because a judge signs a paper. But she knew that anything she said would be used against her. The injustice of the situation was glaring. She was being punished because her son loved her. The situation got even worse when they discovered that Noah had gotten hurt during his escape. Nothing serious, just some scraped knees and a small cut on his hand, but enough for social workers to turn this into a safety issue. "The child put himself in danger trying to reach you," the social worker continued as if reading a death sentence. "This demonstrates that your influence over him is harmful. He's willing to hurt himself, to disobey, to run away, all because of this fantasy that you can be a family again." Amanda wanted to explain that she hadn't asked Noah to run away, that she didn't even know where he was living, that she was precisely working hard to prove she deserved to have them back the right way. But words seemed insufficient in the face of the mountain of evidence being built against her. Every attempt at defense sounded like an excuse. Every explanation seemed to confirm what they had already decided, that she was a danger to her own children. The cruelest moment came when they took Noah away again. The boy clung to her with desperate strength, begging not to have to go, promising he would be good, that he wouldn't run away anymore if he could stay with his mother. Amanda had to be the adult in the situation, had to convince her own son to leave, promising she was working so they could be together forever. But the words came out empty because she herself no longer believed them. How was she going to explain to the court that she was making progress when her own son was running away from home because of her? How was she going to prove she was a positive influence when her presence in his life was causing this type of trauma? Addiction had been cruel, but at least it was an enemy she could identify and fight. Now she was fighting against something much more complex, a system that had had decided her love for her children was harmful to them. It was like being in a game where the rules changed every time she started winning. That night, alone in the tiny room she had rented with so much pride, Amanda faced the cruelest dilemma of her life. She could continue fighting, continue trying to prove she deserved to have her children back, but that meant risking traumatizing them even more. Or she could give up, accept that they would be better off without her, and at least ensure they grew up in peace without the emotional confusion her presence seemed to cause. It was an impossible choice: fight for what she loved most in the world and risk hurting them in the process, or give them up to protect them from herself. The recovery she had fought so hard to achieve seemed to mean nothing in the face of this brutal reality. She had stopped using drugs, had found work, had started rebuilding her life, but none of that mattered if her very existence was a source of pain for her children. Amanda spent the entire night staring at the tin can with her savings, wondering if all this effort had been in vain, if it wouldn't be more loving to simply disappear from their lives forever. But deep down, a stubborn little voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, there was still a way to transform this tragedy into something different. Amanda's decision not to give up was like throwing a stone into a lake. The waves spread in directions she never imagined. When news about the incident with Noah spread among her few clients, the reactions were as varied as they were surprising. 3 of the 5 families she served canceled their contracts immediately. One of them didn't even have the decency to call. They simply left a message on the answering machine saying they no longer needed the services. Another was more direct: "We don't want this kind of drama in our house." The third was the cruelest, suggesting that Amanda should accept reality and stop disturbing those poor children. Each cancellation was like a stab, not just for the lost money, but for the confirmation that the world had decided she didn't deserve a second chance. Addiction had marked her forever, and now any problem, any complication, would always be her fault. Amanda felt like she was carrying an invisible cross, where each step toward recovery was followed by 2 steps back. The injustice of the situation burned like fire in her chest. She was being punished for loving her children, for them loving her back. But not everything was negative, and that's when Amanda discovered the world is more complex than it seems. Of the 2 families that remained, one of them, the Johnsons, not only kept the contract but offered extra help. Sarah Johnson, a mother of 2 teenage children, called Amanda the day after the incident with an unexpected proposal. "Look, Amanda," she said with a sincerity that cut to the heart, "I know what it's like to have a child who does desperate things when they're suffering. My oldest went through a difficult phase a few years ago, and I learned that sometimes love manifests in the most complicated ways." Sarah not only kept Amanda as a personal organizer, but also referred her to 2 friends who were looking for help. "You do excellent work," she explained, "and I believe everyone deserves a chance to rebuild their life, especially when that person is fighting for their children." For the first time in months, Amanda cried from gratitude instead of despair. There were good people in the world, people who could see beyond labels and prejudices. The Johnson family became more than clients. They became allies in a war Amanda had been fighting alone for so long. It was through the Johnsons that Amanda met other people willing to bet on her. One of Sarah's friends, Margaret Chen, owned a small commercial cleaning company and was looking for someone to help with office organization. "I don't care about your past," Margaret said during the informal interview they had at a coffee shop. "I care about your present and what you can do from here forward. Sarah told me about your situation, and honestly, any mother who fights so hard for her children is the type of person I want on my team." Margaret offered Amanda not just regular work, but also the chance to learn about business management. "If you really want to build something of your own," she explained, "you need to understand how a business really works. It's not enough to be good at what you do. You need to know how to sell, manage, plan." It was exactly the type of opportunity Amanda needed, but never imagined she would receive. Recovery was taking a form she didn't expect. It wasn't just about her, but about a network of people who believed in the possibility of change. Meanwhile, Carlos, the man who had planted the seed of the business idea in Amanda's head, reappeared in her life in a totally unexpected way. He had heard about the incident through the network of ex-addicts in recovery and sought out Amanda to offer something she never imagined: a partnership. "Look," he said during a meeting at a simple restaurant, "my catering company is growing, but I need someone who understands organization and planning. You have a natural ability for that, and I have market experience. How about we join forces?" The proposal was tempting, but Amanda was hesitant. She was afraid her reputation would hurt Carlos's business, that she would be a burden instead of a partner. But Carlos laughed at this concern. "Amanda, half my clients are people who have gone through difficulties priorities in life. They don't want perfection, they want authenticity. They want to know they're helping someone who really understands what it means to start over. The partnership wasn't charity, it was a real opportunity for mutual growth. Carlos needed Amanda's organizational skills, and she needed his experience and network of contacts. But while some doors opened, others closed with even greater force. News about Noah reached the ears of the temporary foster family where Grace was living, and the reaction was devastating. The Morrisons were an upper-middle-class family who had genuinely grown attached to Grace and were considering adopting her permanently. When they learned about the incident, they became worried that Amanda might influence Grace the same way she had influenced Noah. The result was a decision that broke Amanda's heart. Grace, now 15, decided to file a lawsuit to prevent any contact with her biological mother. The girl, influenced by the Morrisons and traumatized by years of chaos, wanted to ensure she would never again have to deal with the instability Amanda represented in her life. The lawsuit was like a bomb in Amanda's life. Not only was she fighting to win back her children, but now she was being sued by one of them to ensure that never happened. The injustice was so absurd it was almost surreal. She was being punished for trying to be a better mother. The emotional impact of the lawsuit filed by Grace was devastating. Amanda understood the girl was protecting herself the only way she knew how, but that didn't make the pain any less. Reading the legal documents where her own daughter described her as a harmful and destabilizing influence was like taking a bullet to the chest. Grace had grown up, had become an intelligent and determined young woman, but had also become a stranger who saw Amanda as a threat instead of a mother. Addiction hadn't just destroyed the years they had lost together, it had destroyed the very possibility of rebuilding that relationship. Amanda found herself in an impossible situation. The more she fought to prove she had changed, the more she seemed to confirm to others that she was unstable. Each step toward her children seemed to push them further away. It was like being in emotional quicksand, where every movement to save herself only sank her deeper. But even facing this brutal reality, Amanda knew she couldn't give up, because sometimes when you're fighting for the most important thing in your life, the only option is to keep fighting, even when all evidence suggests the battle is already lost. The pressure of being sued by her own daughter while trying to build a business and prove her capacity as a mother was almost unbearable. Amanda spent nights awake, wondering if she was being selfish in continuing to fight. Maybe Grace was right. Maybe she really was a harmful influence. Maybe true love was leaving her children in peace, allowing them to build stable lives away from her. But whenever these thoughts came, she remembered Carlos's words, the Johnsons' support, the opportunity Margaret had given her. There were people who believed in her, who saw potential where others saw only problems. Recovery wasn't just about her. It was about proving that real change was possible, that the past didn't have to define the future. And if she gave up now, she wouldn't just be abandoning her children. She would be confirming that all the people who doubted her were right from the beginning. That was something Amanda simply couldn't accept. The battle was far from over, and she was determined to fight to the end, even if that end wasn't what she expected. 2 years passed like a hurricane of hard work, tears, small victories, and major disappointments. Amanda barely recognized the woman she was when it all began. That lost and desperate person who lived on borrowed couches seemed to have existed in another life. The partnership with Carlos had flourished in a way neither of them expected. What started as a small partnership between an experienced ex-addict and a desperate mother had transformed into a service corporation that employed 50 people. Phoenix Rising Services, a name Amanda chose as a metaphor for her own journey, offered everything from catering to business organization, commercial cleaning, and efficiency consulting. But the most important thing wasn't the impressive numbers or financial success. The most important thing was that Amanda had created something bigger than a business. She had created a community. More than half of the employees were people in recovery, ex-addicts who had found in the company not just a job, but a second chance to prove their worth. The injustice Amanda had suffered became fuel to combat the injustice others faced. Each person she hired was a small revolution against prejudice, proof that the past doesn't define the future. The company's growth wasn't accidental. It was the result of a careful strategy Amanda developed with help from Margaret Chen and other mentors she found along the way. She understood that it wasn't enough to offer quality services. She needed to tell a story that touched people's hearts. Phoenix Rising didn't just sell organization or cleaning. It sold hope. It sold the idea that everyone deserves a second chance. Amanda became the spokesperson for this philosophy, speaking at business events, participating participating in radio programs, telling her story whenever possible. It wasn't easy to expose herself that way, to reveal the darkest moments of her life to strangers, but she discovered that vulnerability was power, that her story of fall and recovery inspired others to believe in the possibility of change. Business owners who initially hired Phoenix out of curiosity became loyal clients when they saw the real impact the company had on people's lives. The family of employees Amanda built became living proof that genuine transformation was possible when accompanied by real opportunities and consistent support. But the real test came when Amanda received the summons for the final custody hearing. After 2 years of legal battle, cross lawsuits, endless reports, and psychological evaluations, the moment of final decision had finally arrived. Amanda entered the courtroom not as the desperate and broken woman from before, but as a successful businesswoman, wearing a suit she had bought herself with money from her own work. She carried with her not just financial documents proving her stability, but something much more powerful, a detailed social project showing how Phoenix Rising was helping other families in similar situations. The company had created a support program for parents in recovery, offering not just employment but also counseling, professional training, and emotional support. Amanda wasn't just asking for a chance to be a mother again, she was demonstrating that she had become a community leader, someone who transformed pain into purpose, who used her experience to lift others up. The addiction that was once her greatest shame was now her greatest credential for helping people going through the same struggle. The most tense moment of the hearing came when Grace was called to testify. Amanda hadn't seen her in person for almost 2 years, and the transformation was shocking. The 15-year-old girl who entered the courtroom was almost a woman, tall, confident, with a maturity in her eyes that broke Amanda's heart. For a moment, mother and daughter looked at each other across the room, and Amanda saw in Grace's face a complex mixture of emotions, pain, anger, but also something that seemed like curiosity. When Grace began to speak, her voice was firm, controlled, very different from the traumatized child Amanda remembered. But what she said surprised everyone in the room. For a long time, I hated my mother, Grace began, looking directly at Amanda. I blamed her for everything that happened to us, for all the pain we went through. I wanted her to simply disappear from my life forever. Amanda felt her heart breaking, but forced herself to keep listening. But in recent months, I started researching her company, what she was doing, and I realized something I didn't want to admit. She really changed. She didn't just stop using drugs, she transformed into someone who helps other people transform too. Grace's testimony continued to be even more surprising. I talked to some of the people who work at my mother's company, she said, her voice gaining strength with each word. I talked to parents who were in the same situation she was in, who managed to get their families back because of the opportunities she offered. And I understood that my mother wasn't just trying to win us back, she was trying to ensure that other children wouldn't go through what Noah, Lily, and I went through. Grace paused for a moment, wiped away a tear that insisted on falling, and continued, I still have resentments, I still have fears, but I also have pride. Pride in having a mother who transformed the worst thing that happened in her life into the best thing she could do for others. If she managed to help so many families reunite, maybe it's time to give our own family a chance to reunite too. The silence that followed these words was deafening. Amanda was crying openly, not caring who was watching. After years believing she had lost Grace forever, discovering that her daughter not only forgave her but was also proud of her was more than she ever dared to dream. The judge's decision was unanimous and final. Custody of all 3 children would be returned to Amanda Rodriguez. But more important than the legal decision was what happened in the following minutes. Noah and Lily ran into their mother's arms, as if the last few years had been just a bad nightmare. Grace was more hesitant, but when she finally approached and hugged Amanda, she whispered in her ear, I missed you, Mom. I missed the mother you always were underneath everything. It was recognition that addiction had hidden, but never completely destroyed, the love and connection that existed between them. Amanda's recovery hadn't just been about stopping drug use or building a business. It had been about rediscovering who she really was when she wasn't being controlled by addiction. And who she was deep down was a mother who loved her children more than her own life, a woman capable of transforming pain into purpose, failure into strength. The injustice she had suffered was transformed into justice for dozens of other families who found hope through Phoenix Rising. 6 months after reunification, Amanda was in the kitchen of the new house she had bought, a real house, with separate rooms for each child, a yard where Lily could play, an office where she could work. It was a Saturday morning, and for the first time in years she was making pancakes for all 3 children. Grace was helping with breakfast, Noah was telling bad jokes that made everyone laugh, and Lily was drawing the reunited family on a piece of paper. It was a simple, everyday scene, but one that represented the miracle of true recovery. Amanda had proven that real change was possible when accompanied by concrete action, hard work, and unconditional love. She hadn't just won back her children, she had won back herself, had rediscovered who she was when she wasn't being defined by addiction. Phoenix Rising continued growing, helping more families reunite, creating more opportunities for people society had discarded. And every morning when Amanda woke up in the house she had built with her own work, surrounded by the children she had fought so hard to recover, she knew she had done more than survive. She had risen from her own ashes, exactly like the phoenix that gave name to her company and her new life. Amanda Rodriguez's journey teaches us a powerful lesson about human nature. We are not defined by our worst moments, but by our ability to rise after them. Her story proves that true love, especially a mother's love for her children, can be the most transformative force in the universe. When Amanda was at rock bottom, addicted, and having lost everything, she could have chosen self-pity or resignation, but she chose to fight, chose transformation, chose to prove that real change is possible when accompanied by concrete action and unwavering determination. What makes this story even more impactful is that Amanda didn't settle for just recovering her own family. She transformed her pain into purpose, creating opportunities for other people in similar situations to also rebuild their lives. Phoenix Rising Services became much more than a successful company. It became a symbol of hope, living proof that the past doesn't have to determine the future. Each employee hired, each family reunited through the company's programs, each life transformed is a testament to the power of second chances when they come with hard work and genuine purpose. The reconciliation with Grace, Noah, and Lily wasn't just the happy ending of a personal story. It was validation that unconditional love can overcome any trauma, any resentment, any scar left by the past. When Grace testified in court, recognizing not just forgiveness but also pride in her mother's transformation, she was declaring something profound about the nature of family, that true bonds don't break with life's storms. They only strengthen when we go through them together. Amanda proved that being a good mother doesn't mean never making mistakes. It means having the courage to acknowledge them and the determination to do whatever it takes to correct them. This story shows us that redemption is possible for anyone willing to fight for it, and that sometimes our greatest victories are born from our greatest defeats. If this transformation journey touched your heart, if it made you believe a little more in humanity's capacity for change, share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to start over. Hit that like button if you believe everyone deserves a second chance, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove the impossible is just a matter of perspective. Sometimes the right story arrives at exactly the right time to remind someone that it's worth continuing to fight for their dreams and the people they love.